Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. So the Warriors, they beat the Atlanta Hawks at Chase Center 143-141 in double overtime in a really, really exhausting game, I'm sure, to play, but it definitely was exhausting to watch. This was one that the Warriors, they were clicking from the start. Klay was hot. Everybody was playing well. The Hawks, they did not look good at all. They were shooting terribly. The Warriors defense was up on them. And then basically in the third quarter, it all just went to hell. The Warriors coughed up their whole lead. And you could see on some of these Warriors faces like this sense of panic on some of the new guys' faces, some of the young guys, some of the two-way guys' faces for a minute. And I was texting my buddy Aaron in Toronto. Then I was also texting my friends on this group text, and I was also on Twitter. And this is a kind of game where it just is absurd. It's kind of ridiculous. The whole thing was just really, really hilarious. It was like frustrating and then alternating, like from frustrating to exhilarating. And they pulled it out. The Warriors are on a 5-game home winning streak. They're 5-0 with 3 games left. And in a game like this, like you just start throwing your notes out from the beginning because the game just completely changed. And at the end of the day, I think the real storyline is it's the 3 veteran Warriors who've been there, who have won multiple titles. They're the ones that won this game. They're the ones that closed it out. That's Klay Thompson, who had a great game. Draymond Green, who had his typical like all around solid game. Then Kevon Looney, who had 21 boards, 5 assists, and hit the winning bucket. He actually had 2 shots at it. He had a rebound tip, which missed, and then he got it again. And that one was true off the backboard. It was really rough because like you could see it like on all these places where I was like texting or tweeting, people were like up and down on Poole. And I've talked about so much about how he is such a high variance player right now. And as good as he is, sometimes he just gets too wild, too loosey-goosey. And he actually was like alternating from good Poole, bad Poole. It felt like every other possession. And, there was that play at the end of regulation where he could have just passed it to Klay on the wing. I believe he was open, but he tried to get a foul call on a drive and like he dribbled it off himself out of bounds, And then the Warriors were lucky because they got the ball and Klay missed a 3-pointer, but it was actually a 2. So they were lucky he didn't hit that. And then the ball rebounded out to Poole. And they were lucky that, he got blocked by DeJounte Murray, but they were lucky that I think Murray actually slapped the ball out and it went to Dante DiVincenzo right into his shooting pocket and he drained the 3 and they went to overtime. So that was really, really frustrating. And then to start overtime, it was very much like the Warriors had a couple turnovers. They were sloppy. The spacing was just off. And then eventually Poole hit a 3 on a fast break. Klay was open. Dante DiVincenzo looked at Jordan Poole, hit him on the left wing instead of Klay on the right. And Poole hit the shot, right? Everybody's like, okay, Jordan Poole, good Jordan Poole's back. And then to end the first overtime, Klay has been hot and he's kind of saved the Warriors up until this point from a scoring perspective. And then Poole, he tries to take Trae Young, who like little Trae Young with short arms and, short dude. And he goes up for a mid-ranger and then can't get the shot off and then does the thing where he just drops the ball because he was about to travel. It was like, what? I mean, just give the ball to Klay at that point. You guys are tied, and Klay's hot. You owe him that. And so Jordan Poole's decision making and some of his lesser qualities were coming out at all the wrong times in this one. And, you know, it was rough to see. And like I said, at times simultaneously, like frustrating, aggravating, but then he would do something good and it was just back and forth. But that's who Jordan Poole is, right? He needs to be aggressive, like I've talked about, because that's what the Warriors need from their primary ball handler right now. But, in this one, it's just like his decisions were just not very, very sharp. But, hopefully he learns from that. And hopefully he gets that handle a little bit tighter. Like I've talked about this, right? Like I've never seen anybody as good as him dribble the ball out of his hands. Just like it just slips out of his hands all the time. And honestly, there were a couple times in overtime and double overtime where Poole could have been called for one of those carries that he gets called for lately, right? It was like questionable, but like if they're calling those things carries right now, there were a couple where I was like, oh, I thought they were going to blow the whistle. But that being said, again, he's got to keep doing what he does, but he's got to like slow it down. He's got to rein it in. He's got to be smart about it. And luckily, they got away with this one, and largely due first and foremost to Klay Thompson. 46 minutes, 21 for 39 from the field, 10 for 21 from three, only 2 free throws, 2 for 2 from the line, 7 boards, 3 assists, plus 13, highest plus minus on the night, 54 points. I know Donovan Mitchell scored 71, but, all good to him. But Klay Thompson looking like he did tonight, as I've said throughout this homestand and throughout the stretch that Steph has been out, you live and die with Poole and Klay. And Klay was the one that you lived with, right? He was the one that really, if he doesn't go off, just plain and simple, the Warriors are not in this game. So it was a heck of a time for a bunch of dudes to be out. If you didn't know, Wiseman didn't play. His rolled ankle still kept him out. Jonathan Kuminga didn't play, kind of a swollen foot issue. Not sure how that is going to be, how long that'll take. And then Andrew Wiggins was still out. JaMychal Green was still out. And of course, Steph was still out. And, this was a game where I feel like Jonathan Kuminga and Wiseman would have really, really flourished, especially Kuminga, because the Hawks don't roll out anyone really that big. And he's as athletic as anybody out there. And I feel like he would have really, really given the Warriors that boost that he usually does, but even more so. Like I feel like he could have had like a 20-point game, a really efficient one at that. And then also Wiseman, like I feel that just with his size and youth and athleticism against this Hawks team, he would have had a good time against some of these smaller bigs that they roll out there, because I always talk about how Wiseman is way better against smaller bigs than he is against people who are his size and maybe larger. I mean, that's true for probably anybody, in basketball, if someone's smaller than you. But the variance for Wiseman is even clearer than that. And I also have wanted to see Wiseman play against Okongwu, who was in Wiseman's draft class and was out most of his rookie year with, I think, a bum foot. So I don't think I've ever played in the pros. And Okongwu was pretty good. He was out of USC, and he had 16 points, 12 boards. Again, at the end of the day, it's a W. The Warriors are actually now in 9th place. They have the same record as the Phoenix Suns, who have dropped pretty far. They're both 20 and 18. And, I think the Warriors are obviously trending up, whereas the Suns are trending down, especially with Devin Booker out for a few more weeks. Draymond Green, 45 minutes, 2 for 5 from the field. He hit that big 3-pointers, only three on the night in double overtime. And I was like, oh man, this is such a weird game. This is so absurd that like the basketball gods were just like, oh, you know how we're going to end it? We're going to end it with like Lamb fumbling the ball through his legs underneath the basket in the paint, finding Draymond with the shot clock running out, and Draymond leaning forward, hitting a 3-pointer. Like the basketball gods were like, you want to see like a weird game? This is how we're going to end it for you. And guess what? It did not end because the refs kept giving Trae Young free throws. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, I've talked about how I am not a Trae Young fan. I don't like his game for baiting for free throws all the time. I don't like when people say he's like the next Steph Curry because he doesn't do half the things Steph does on the court. But then the basketball gods were like, hey, you know what? You know how we're going to end it? We're going to end it with Kevon Looney making the winning basket on a missed shot where he gets the rebound, tips it up there, doesn't go in. The Hawks, they didn't have anybody else rebounding of size underneath. And Looney pretty much got an open look once he got the second rebound and just hit it right off the glass, right in. And honestly, everybody looked exhausted. It felt like everybody was relieved on both sides that that game was over. I know that I was, and it's funny because the Warriors, they've had some really, really close games on this homestand, and hopefully it just serves as a reminder that y'all aren't there yet, especially the younger dudes. You know what I'm saying? It's like they were so coasting for a while. They were playing really well early on, and then out of the break, out of halftime, first half they were like they were playing like the quote unquote Warriors, like this is the Warriors with a capital W. And then out of the break, they just waltzed out there and forgot that they had to play the rest of the game. Their defense was just, I mean, in the third quarter, Atlanta was getting anything they wanted in the paint at the basket. There were like a bunch of dunks in the half court, a bunch of layups, a bunch of floaters. And then when the Warriors tried to pack it in a little bit more, I mean, the Hawks, they weren't hitting anything from three in the first half. And then they just started draining everything, it was a really, really weird game. And I got to say, like, you just chalk it up to like, hopefully, like this is obviously a confidence builder for Klay. And I think it ideally is a learning experience for Jordan Poole. And also like some of the subs, right? Like Anthony Lamb, he played decently well, 7 for 12, 2 for 6 from 3, 7 boards, 4 assists, 17 points. Ty Jerome didn't have as good of a game. Didn't shoot very well, 1 for 6, missed all 3 of his threes. And then Moses Moody, he had some up and down moments. Sometimes where I was like, why did he just drive to get blocked? But I will give some shine to Patrick Baldwin Jr. He played 11 minutes, was 3 for 7 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, 2 boards, 1 steal, 1 block, 8 points. And may not be the best line in the world, but like, again, just seeing him out there, he looks like he's going to be ready sooner than we thought. And I'm not saying he's going to be like a 20-minute game player, but with his size and just we're seeing more of his basketball IQ and instincts, and I'm liking it. He knows how to play. And I mentioned a couple episodes ago that is really, really refreshing because some of these lottery picks who I really, really like, like that kind of feel for the game, the kind of getting used to really, really knowing the game has been something that has taken some time. And a lot of that is because of the limited reps that they get on a title contending team, right? If you put them on the Houston Rockets, then whole nother story. They can just mess up as much as they want and jack up as many shots as they want. So, yeah, good win, good overall feeling. I was like, oh man, if they lose this in double overtime, I'm really not going to be happy recording this podcast. So they're now 5-0 at home, 3 games left. It's revenge season. They get Detroit on Wednesday, the 4th, Orlando on Saturday the 7th, and then Phoenix on Tuesday the 10th. Detroit, of course, and Orlando were both teams on that opening 0-5 road trip. And Phoenix, of course, has beaten the Warriors twice this season, both in Phoenix. And those were games where Klay looked really, really bad. Right? Those were the ones where everyone was doubting him. And he seemed like he was too much in his head. The first one was the one where he was just talking nonstop trash with Devin Booker, and then he got tossed, his first ejection of his career. And then the second one was where he just kept forcing up shots, right? And like kept forcing. And then they had their team meeting after that, and then things started getting a little bit better. So it's great to see Klay have a game like this. He hit some really, really big clutch shots, and hopefully he stays consistent. This is a sign of where he can still get. And hey, he's doing this without Steph out there, right? People who question how good Klay is, how good he's been throughout his career, saying, it's because of Steph. It's like, well, Steph ain't out there. Jordan Poole's out there and he kind of plays like Steph, but no one's going to say Jordan Poole is Stephen Curry, right? So Klay is doing his thing, and you love to see it, and you just want to see it keep going and make sure that they keep building this momentum. These things are what help build chemistry and help build confidence for everybody, top down. That's all I got on this one. Very much the epitome of what the Warriors season has been so far, up and down, and hopefully, at the very end, it's a big fat W.